Hello everybody, welcome to episode 91 of Short Viewers. Today we'll be going over Season 4, Episode 8 of Invincible, entitled Don't Leave Me Hanging Here. Now, beforehand, I apologize a little bit because I do have a bit of allergy, so if you hear some sniffling, that's why. But yeah, to get off this episode, it was kind of mid. I gotta admit, it was not a great finale. However, it did set up things well for the next season of Invincible, which I cannot wait to see. But yeah, it honestly was probably I'd say second to least favorite episode of this whole season, but that's not to undermine it or to its detriment, because this season was a really, really good season, like great season of Invincible. I'd arguably say probably my favorite season. I don't know exactly, but it's up there most certainly. It's at least second. But yeah, so to start off this episode, the reason why I didn't really like it was just a lot of personal relationship stuff, because we see at the beginning of the episode as Nolan and Mark are coming back to Earth. They're trying to discussing just random stuff like that. Speaking of Take Jacket, we actually see the episode begin with the Viltrumites invade Earth, destroy everything. But this is just Mark having like a I don't know, really a mental breakdown, but like a daydreaming, like PTSD thing, a PTSD flashback, or I guess a vision. But yeah, this is a recurring theme throughout this episode, that Mark is suffering from PTSD due to the events of the Viltrum War and all that, of the Viltrumite War and all that. But yeah, so we see ultimately they land on Earth, and everyone goes to meeting up and all of that. We see as Mark goes to meet up with his mom, Debbie, and as he's meeting up with her, we get another one of those flashbacks. And this is a brutal flashback. We see as Thrag, because it's predominantly Thrag is like the main focal point of these flashbacks. We see as Thrag comes in, rips Debbie's head off and all of that, and it was brutal. Like, it was a brutal scene, but it was sick too. What you see is him and his mom are discussing, and they get to talking, and they're like, yeah, Oliver is actually not with us. He's on Telestria healing up, and she's kind of mad about this. And we see as Nolan actually ends up coming in, just talking with her, and she's obviously outraged about Oliver having been left alone by his parents with no one really there to watch over him, none of his kin at least, because he does have friends there, just not kin. But yeah, we see that, and we see as Mark ends up meeting up with Eve, and just kind of briefly talking and all that stuff, and then we see as they end up going out and having an outing with William and his partner. I can't remember what his name is, but yeah, so they end up going and walking about, and Mark has another one of these, I guess, like flashbacks, and he sees this time as like everyone on like that college campus is slimed. He sees Thrag kill William and all that, and yeah, so progresses. Ultimately, we get to see, well, this is one of the first things we notice. Eve has gained a little bit of weight. So Mark was obviously going to be curious about this, but even if he didn't notice it at first. But yeah, so we see as she kind of, well, this actually happened before the little meeting, but she reveals to him how she kind of put Invincible ink on the side burner for the time being, and how she's been helping with her family after her dad like blew his back out at work. She's been there helping around the house and everything. So she didn't really have a lot of time to take care of herself, which is really sad. And she had gained weight because of that. But yeah, and she'd been under a lot of stress, obviously, which she ultimately reveals the cause of here in a little bit, because her and Mark end up sitting up on the roof eating food, and she reveals to Mark that, yes, she indeed had gotten pregnant by him before he had left, and she had an abortion because she couldn't handle it at the time. And this obviously hurts. But it doesn't hurt Mark. He's not like mad at Eve. He's just mad that he couldn't be there for her at such difficult time and all that, and so make such a difficult decision. And so they cry and console for a bit. And we also get to see some more of like Debbie, what's going on Earth. We see as Debbie is talking with Paul, and we learned that her and Paul had actually broken up months prior to this episode, because there's been a 10-month gap between them leaving and them coming back, because that's why everyone presumed that they were dead and all that, because they've been gone for 10 months. But yeah, so we see as they talk, and it's revealed that her and Paul broke up previously because they just had too much differences in their lives, and ultimately Paul ends up convincing Debbie to go into space and go to Telestria so that she can watch over Oliver, which Debbie's like, you know what, yeah, I believe I'll do that. So we also get to see as Nolan's going around, and he ends up going back to the spot where him and Mark landed in, I believe it was the finale of Season 1, where they crashed down, and Nolan was going to town on him. He was like, think, Mark! But yeah, so we see this, and he's kind of having some, I guess, noise, like reminiscing a little, not reminiscing, but like remembering who he was then and what had happened. And we see as Cecil pulls up, and Cecil, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but, crap, what's his name? Sinclair? D.A. Sinclair, Donald, Cecil, and the other science woman, they had been working on a portal that we get to see this randomly toward the beginning of the episode. They've been working on the portal to reclaim Robot and Beast Girl, or what's her name? Monster Girl, my bad. But yeah, so they were working on a portal to retrieve them, but ultimately they kept failing, so Cecil shut down the stuff. But yeah, so we see Cecil pull up, and Cecil bro's got some gall. He comes up to Omni-Man. He's like, yo, bro, get off my planet, pal. He could have gotten instantaneous time. Yes, it was probably just a hologram of Cecil and not actually Cecil. Well, I think it was just a hologram. But, yeah. He comes up there and he's like, and Nolan's like, I almost died out there fighting. And Cecil says, die like 2,300 something more times, and then maybe you'll have paid it back, which is crazy. But, yeah, I commended Cecil for that. I'm usually not a big Cecil fan, but the bro had some gall there, some gumption. But, yeah, so we see that, and we also get to see as Mark and Cecil end up meeting up, and Mark and Cecil are talking, and they are just kind of briefly discussing about everything. He's wanting a debrief from Mark, and here we get to see, when we got to see another flashback to Thrag, but we get to see as, well, him and Eve were sitting eating burgers. He had his flash scene to Thrag killing Eve, like pushing her eyes in. But yeah, so then at this point where Cecil and Mark are talking, Cecil wanted a debrief so that like they can understand the Viltrumites better and watch out for them, because like that's why they were on Earth. Well, they were on Earth because they were looking for the Viltrumites. They came back there to look for the Viltrumites, but they also came there to establish like a radar system to look for the Viltrumites. The Coalition did. Yeah, so Cecil wants some information on him so he can be better prepared for the next time, possibly. And Mark has another one of the flash scenes where he sees Cecil killed by Thrag. He gets a hole punched through him, as is the Viltrumite way of killing people. Gravely wounding people, because I don't believe we've seen any of the main cast die from that yet. But yeah, so we see this, and then Cecil's like, well, Mark's actually like, yo, I know when you discussed those professionals a while back, I would like to have one of those. So we see is ultimately he's Donald has escorting Mark home, and he's like, yeah, I'll get you a therapist or whatever. But yeah, so ultimately we see Mark goes back home, and then Nolan and Debbie prepare to head off. So they kind of talk, and Debbie reveals her plans to go to space and go with Oliver. So her and Nolan end up going up to the Coalition spaceship, shuttle, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, so we see that, and then we just kind of get some stuff from them. We get to see as Nolan is talking with the dude, like the little operator guy, and he's revealing how they've got the radar set up and everything, and like the long distancing scan. And before they head out, Nolan brings over Debbie to look at the view of Earth, and she's awestruck by it because he told her it was spectacular. And I don't know if she necessarily believed him, but she went up and she saw it was awestruck. And we see as Nolan goes to like reach to put his arm around her, but he ends up avoiding that, which is probably a smart decision because they're not there yet. But yeah, so then we get to see as Eve and Mark are talking a little bit more, and Eve and him are just kind of chilling in Debbie's house, because Debbie still put all the bills on auto pay and all that, so they weren't actually going to lose the house. But him and Eve are just sitting there, and Eve ultimately suggests to him to go take a flight, because taking a flight to help clear his head and all that. So we see as he goes and flies about and all of that. And this is where the episode actually gets good, like the last 13 minutes of the episode. But yeah, so you get that 30 minutes of kind of boring personal relationship stuff, but then we get to the actual good part. And he's flying around, and then he sees Thrags, and we presume it's just another one of those flash scenes. He rubs his eyes, opens them and everything. Thrag is still there. Thrag is on Earth. And we see as Thrag kind of talks to him, he suggests to him an ultimatum. He's like, okay, so the Viltrumites are here. We are here. We are hiding among your people, and we're going to procreate with your people so that we can revive our race, our populace. And he's like, if you allow us to do this, then we will not destroy your planet. But if you fight against it and you don't allow it, we will destroy your planet, and our race, both our race and your race, will end. So we see they ultimately discuss, and at first Mark is against this. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But he ultimately comes to the sense that he's like, I don't want to risk this. I can't risk Eve. And the main thing that he sees is Eve. He sees all those flashbacks again, or the flash scenes, and is like, yeah, I will allow you to do this. And Thrag's like, yeah, you just saved your whole population. Congratulations to you. He's like, the universe is a fickle thing and all that stuff. But yeah, so we see as Thrag's like, yeah, you will not be seeing me again, and he heads off. Now, during this, we got to see like a couple of glimpses of the Viltrumites actually living among the people, which is really scary because the Viltrumites look like just normal humans. You can't tell them apart besides when they're actually in action. But yeah, we see as Lucan's going around, we see Craig, and we see Anissa as well. But yeah, so we see all this, and then that is really where the episode ends, after Mark is kind of just reeling with this new revelation. The Viltrumites are here, and they are fighting. Yeah, so then we get to our credits, and then we get our credit scene. Now, this scene was really good because it's set up very well, because we see as Talia ends up coming in to Alan's. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but we got to see Alan briefly have some trouble with like the other coalition planets on what to do about the Viltrumites. They were obviously enraged at him because the Viltrumites still lived and they weren't completely exterminated, so they were kind of enraged. But ultimately, Alan ended up setting control and establishing, I guess, new vehemence in them to destroy the Viltrumites, and I guess more security and the idea that they would destroy the Viltrumites. But yeah, so we see as Telia comes in with a little like report thing for Alan, and she's like, "It's only for your eyes. It's from Thetis, and he left this behind for when he died, and ultimately you were put in charge of the coalition." So he ends up watching it, and Thetis reveals to him how, yes, he did keep the Surge virus, and how he had, I guess, kind of harvested it after the Viltrumite attack, or the attack on Viltrum. But however, during this time, he had actually perfected it. And he reveals to Alan how he must use this to wipe out the population of Viltrumites. Man, he mentions how also beings of similar genetic makeup will also likely be killed by this as well. But he's like, it's all for the greater cause. We must annihilate the Viltrumite scourge with the scourge virus. But yeah, so he ends up walking in. Alan actually walks into like the little like lab area. He sees it, and the scourge virus is there. So now we have this to look forward to the next season. That I guess the Viltrumites are on Earth, and now that the entirety of Earth might be wiped out by the scourge virus. So I really cannot wait to see what happens in season 5. Since I really don't know that much about it, I've been watching like a couple like short videos here and there on what is likely to happen in Invincible season 5, but I really don't know. But I'm most certainly excited to see. Like, it'll probably be a year or so before we see it, but I cannot wait, and I know it will be good whenever it does come out, because we get to see more Viltrumite antics and more coalition antics. And I love the space parts of Invincible. That's why I did much like this episode, because it had a lot of more of the personal relationship stuff, which I'm not big on in Invincible. However, I do love like the space stuff and like the actual plot. So yeah, I cannot wait to see that. And that's all there really was for episode 8 of season 4 of Invincible, the big finale. But yeah, so yeah, that's all I really have for episode 91 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.